there are things to hide, politicians often claim secrecy is necessary for good governance. Good evening and welcome. This is Face the Nation. We meet again Monday at 9:30 p.m. live on TV1. We are coming to you direct from Stein Studios in Ratmalana. Tonight, our topic of discussion revolves around good governance and also political climate. Just last week, there was news about the central bank bond controversy taking a new stride, a new turn, a new twist. There were two individuals who are now sitting in parliament being embroiled with accepting money. You can somewhat call it bribes as well. And one of them came to the media and says that he is willing to give this money back to charity. Now, if this is tantamount to a crime, a criminal offense, someone saying that they will give the money to charity, I don't know what this means. To discuss all this and more tonight on the show, we've invited four guests. One is going to join us shortly from now. Let me introduce them to you who are here in the studios tonight, live. Joining us tonight is Malinda Senivaratne, political commentator. Nice to have you on board, Malinda. Also joining us this evening is Rusiripala Tennakone. He is now a councillor of the Colombo Municipal Council representing the Sri Lanka Freedom Party. Also joining us tonight on the show is Kirti Tennakone, Executive Director of the Campaign for a Free and Fair Election, who Manjula Gajanayaka, National Coordinator from the Centre for Monitoring Election Violence, will also join us shortly, as I said before. Let's start off tonight's show with Rusiripala Tennakone, who is a council member of the Colombo Municipal Council representing the Sri Lanka Freedom Party. Mr. Tennakone, I want to draw your attention to the recent statements that have been made by a powerful minister attached to the United National Party about giving the money that was accepted by his aides for a political campaign to charity. How do you view this statement?
Well, I think he is following his master, because if you recall the events that took place during the bond scam, when we were discussing matters, there was a time when another powerful minister, more powerful than him, a cabinet minister, more powerful than the person whom you mentioned, I think I can guess whom you are mentioning, a much more powerful person said, why worry? There is 11 billion in the central bank, retained by the central bank, belonging to this company. So why worry? You can recover that money. What is the meaning of that statement? He is the one who gave the cue to these people to take up the position that if they return the money, however illegitimately they earned it, that solves the problem. This is the attitude that they are now carrying forward, because their masters said it, their seniors said it, they vouch for it, they also do the same thing. Sri Lanka has become very famous in the whole world, where ministers' names are being cited now as people who have taken illegitimate monies from perpetrators of big crimes. They go into record. Parliamentarians, whole lot of them are supposed to be in those lists. They have been paid monies to cover up the crimes of these perpetrators, and also to safeguard them, to write books about them, to shape up the stories, to tell them that they have not, to tell the world that they have not done anything wrong. Some people have written books. Now it comes to light that they have been paid.
I want to drag your attention to a few months ago now, where there was a dialogue or a debate between a parliamentarian Namal Rajapaksa and also UNP parliamentarian Sujiva Senasinghe. UNP parliamentarian Sujiva Senasinghe was reprimanding parliamentarian Namal Rajapaksa, and we saw vice versa, Namal Rajapaksa reprimanding Sujiva Senasinghe as well. However, recently, just after this whole controversy took a new stride, we saw Vasantha Samarasinghe stating that MP Namal Rajapaksa has received 800 calls from Arjun Aloysius. and he is not sure whether this individual in question too had received money. Now, take into account what transpires now. More names are to come out, isn't it?
Yes, already the names of these people with whom he has had telephone conversations in a very exceedingly unacceptable manner, large numbers have been published already. Now that has gone into record, CID has found it, and even in the parliament it has been mentioned, it has come up in the reports. So now this shows that these people who committed this huge crime in this country have been in very close contact and have maintained very close relations with people from both sides, opposition, government and ex-government, everywhere.
Let's put all this into perspective now. Now the talk is about 118 individuals having close contact with Arjun Aloysius from Parliament. However, there are only 47 members attached to the United National Party in Parliament during this tenure of the first bond controversy. So the majority of them were surely Sri Lanka Freedom Party members, or it can be from the JVP, from the TNA, we don't know yet. So where does it leave now? Where does it leave the citizenry to believe? What must they believe now? Who is at fault? Is it the Sri Lanka Freedom Party, which you are representing now? Or is it the UNP, or is it the Pudzana Peramuna, or TNA, or the JVP?
No, it is true that they had only 47 UNP members when this was perpetrated for the first time on 27th of February 2015. But when the matter came out, and after August, the composition was different. No, there was no UNP or SLFP, they were in the national government. So they wanted the government MPs, irrespective of their party affiliations, to safeguard them. So they have been all rounded up to be given these grants, to be given these, these checks and
so surely
monies
all
and
118 are not representing the UNP, because they just have over 100 seats.
Yeah.
So there are others also from different political parties.
Naturally they have to be opposition, the members in the government not belonging to the UNP, members in the parliament who are neither UNP nor SLFP. I mean, all have been equally treated.
Thank you very much, Rusripala Thendakon, who is now representing the Sri Lanka Freedom Party, the Colombo Municipal Council. He was once a civil rights activist and also a senior banker. I now move my attention to a very vocal Kirti Thendakon, Executive Director of the Campaign for a Free and Fair Election. Kirti, now there is talk about two nephews or relatives of former President Mahinda Rajapaksa, that is Udanga Veeratunga, as well as our former ambassador to the United States, Jali Wickremesuriya. Both of them's names are now coming out with regard to corruption. At a time, efforts are being made to arrest these people and bring them to Sri Lanka, in particular Udanga Veeratunga, where Sri Lankan government has already spent $300,000 to secure his arrest. Why not efforts are being taken to secure the arrest of Arjuna Mahendran, who was the former governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka? The time starts now.
The real issue with the getting back Arjuna Mahendran to Sri Lanka is it needs diplomatic the influence, the political willness, and the moreover, I mean, there are so much of legal issues related to this. As a citizen of the Singaporean government, they simply do not let their citizens to get back into a country where all this controversy was happened. And that's why at the very beginning, when this controversy took place and he was forcefully removed by the president and his term did not expand for the second time, we were talking about this and we were demanding to question him in related to this, but it unfortunately did not happen. And I think getting him back to Sri Lanka needs so much of time, so much of energy, so much of political willness, where Sri Lanka is lacking, with the present government is lacking, especially his close relationship with the Prime Minister will prevent some of these issues. We don't have legal provisions to do it. For example, last week we saw that Mr. Kodagoda, Yasanta Kodagoda reporting to the judiciary that they are drafting a bill to ensure this. But I don't know how long will it take for that matter.
You spoke about Yasanta Kodagoda from the Attorney General's Department, Kirti. It's quite a surprise right now where the Attorney General's Department is only pointing the finger at the UNP members who are affiliated with the central bank bond controversy. You're accepting money, you're talking to Arjun Aloysius and his cronies, let's say. I'm trying to figure out why isn't the names of members of the joint opposition being mentioned about the Attorney General's Department?
Shamendra, that's a very unfair comment, as we know that so much of people from the SLFP, the UNFPA for that matter, had connections with the Arjun Aloysius and their companies, and that's why at the very beginning, on 2018, January 18, I requested Mr. Austin Fernando, the Secretary to the President, to release all these additional documents. And with the first letter I wrote to the Austin Fernando, I request for C350 annexe. So I knew that in that particular annexe, all these telephone conversations in related to the Pope members, as the annex 1 is listed down there. The other annex 2, the part 2 of that particular annex is about the Ravi Karunanayaka's connections with the Aloysius, especially his wife and his one of his daughters were listed out there. So my issue, so now the database, that particular database is created. If the Parliament or the investigating officers really want to find out who are the parliamentarians who had discussions with the Aloysius, of course, and Kalsun Palihena and so on, definitely they can use this particular database and find out exactly who are the parliamentarians who did it. There are plenty of parliamentarians who did it, and in the same time, then there onwards they can look into the details. They can go into the details and find out who benefited out of this. But it's very unfortunate, from that January 18th until today, we were sent here and there. We were not given the documents. I have wrote to the speaker 6 times, and I am sending the 7th letter tomorrow to the speaker on related to this. So much of communications we had with the Presidential Secretariat, it has not fruitful, and now then Austin Fernando told us that we can go to the National Archives and find these documents, but when I went there, I got to know that 30 years that document will be in a locker. So what basically I am telling here, now we know exactly where this particular data is available. They are not disclosing it. Even though Aegis Department has cleared C350, they are not giving it us. So the issue here is there a real political will to expose all these parliamentarians who had communications with the Aloysius and his companies.
Thank you very much, Kirtan Nikon, Executive Director of the Campaign for a Free and Fair Election. I now move my attention to Malind Sinratna, political commentator. Malind, I want to talk to you about the current political climate in Sri Lanka at present. There seems to be a tug of war between the President and the Prime Minister as we speak. Fortunately or unfortunately, that has given rise to many issues. This has affected the country's economy, this has affected the country's forward march, this has affected the depreciation of the rupee. There seems to be no communication between the two parties, and you see ministers from the SLFP camp going and meeting the President, you see the ministers from the SLFP camp coming and meeting the Prime Minister. You see this happening right throughout, and you're trying to figure out what exactly is happening right now. Are they trying to take the country forward, or are they just trying to mend their political rivalries at present? So my question to you is, Where is Sri Lanka's political climate standing at present? We see former Defence Secretary Gotabaya Rajapaksa speaking at many political fora, attending iftar programs organized by the Muslims. We see this happening right throughout. Now you try to figure out, given the fact what has transpired over the last few years in Sri Lanka, and now you're trying to figure out what exactly is happening.
Yeah, you have flagged a lot of things. I'll try to address all of them. First of all,
yes.
When you began this conversation, you mentioned Sujiv Senasinghe offering to, pay back that money to a charity. If I am a respectable charity, I will say no. This is tainted money. First of all, I must say that. With respect to the political situation right now, you are right about this tug of war between the president and the prime minister. I mean, outside it seems like that. We don't know what they are talking behind closed doors. But that in a way is inevitable. We are talking about two major political parties which have for 70 years been at each other's throats. And they suddenly come together for reasons of political convenience. Today, 3 years after the Yahapalana regime took over, that is January 2015, 3.5 years down the road, we know that Yahapalana is, or good governance, was never part of their agenda. It was the rhetoric. It was useful rhetoric. But as Mangala Samaravira, one of the most senior ministers and senior parliamentarians, senior politicians in this country, once said, who cares about mandates after you get elected? So this we have seen. I mean, we don't have to talk only about the bond issue scam. There are so many other issues that we can talk about, which indicates to us that this whole business of good governance, transparency, accountability, democracy and democratic norms and so on, were never part of they were never serious about it. And what we have today is a situation where we have a government that, a regime, let's say, which doesn't seem to know where it came from, where it's going and where it is standing. It doesn't know what it came to do, what it plans to do and what it's doing. There is so much political confusion that, forget the good part of it, governance. Can they govern is the question that's being asked. Why this has happened and why these people seem to be fighting each other could be, only they would know, we can only surmise that they are all looking to their political futures and trying to figure out what is best to do to lengthen their political careers. We have on the one side Ranil Wickremesinghe and the United National Party, which believes that President Sirisena and the SLFP have let them down, and that they feel they can go it alone. Then we have President Sirisena, who came to power saying, I'm not going to be a two-term president. I will be finished once I'm done with this term. He went to the Supreme Court to check whether he can stay for one more year. And now he has all but declared his candidacy. I don't know, his political fortunes, how they will vote, we don't have to, go into the guesswork there. But clearly, they are at odds with each other. And
you didn't mention about Gotabaya Rajapaksa. I posed a question to you also.
I'm coming to Gotabaya. We have to understand also that the 19th Amendment has a clause called the national government. We mentioned this. The national government allows just that word. It's not defined properly in the 19th Amendment. It allows for a bloated cabinet. It allows you to toss around cabinet portfolios and buy people over, buy crossovers and so on. So they need each other for that. But we are going into major elections, the presidential election and parliamentary election in the next 2 years. And now everyone has to do the arithmetic, the calculation. Gotabaya Rajapaksa's profile is being lifted, knowingly or unknowingly, by those who vilify him. Gotabaya Rajapaksa has not declared his candidacy, but when we read the events that have been happening, the statements he has been making, the Vietmaga operations that he is involved in, and as you mentioned, iftar ceremonies, he is essentially acting very presidential, at least in terms of wanting to be president. So how that factors into the calculations of the United National Party and the Sri Lanka Freedom Party and their political aspirations, we are yet to see. But he is definitely in the picture, in the frame. You can't count the Rajapaksas out. Even today, whether we like it or not, Mahinda Rajapaksa is very popular, as the February 10th local government elections showed. Everyone carried his picture with their campaign posters. So we are in this situation where the government and the constituent parties of this government have to think about the next election rather than the next 10 years of this country, where it is heading, how it is going to be planned, they have abandoned everything. We will probably see, and I think you all will agree, within the next few months, a lot of concessions to the citizens to purchase votes. But when you take the overall picture, the joke on streets is that
you say concessions to the people.
Prices being reduced, that
we
kind
just
of
saw
promising
increase of gas prices as well as fuel prices, and the pay tax being imposed. And you say that
when the elections are close,
are going to be
there are two ways to do it. You can actually slash prices, right, regardless of the consequences to the economy and the long-term effects on everything. And the other thing is to promise, we will give you this much, we will give you that much. But how sustainable is that? We have a situation where, as the joke is that Perpetual Treasury has a majority in Parliament, and we are only talking about what Arjun Aloysius is alleged to have given so many members. He is not the only one who is funding politicians.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Malin Selvaratna, political commentator. It's nice to hear for us when Malin said Perpetual Treasuries has a majority in Parliament. I'm trying to figure out how far that claim is.
It's not my joke, by the way.
118.
118, a big number indeed. Nice to have you back on the show for us after a lapse of many months. I hope you're well and fit and good to go now.
Thank you. I have 4 new parts. So.
Thank you very much, Charitha, for joining us this evening on the show as well. So I open the floor for the questioning of our journalists. Let's start off with Charitha.
Thank you, Shamil. My first question is to Kirti. Now, there's another election looming, the provincial council elections, and we are.
It was due long time ago. So.
And we have to go ahead without stringent poll financing laws. What do you make of this situation with what's been happening with the bond investigation?
Now, as you very correctly said, the 3 provincial councils, Sabaragamuwa, Eastern and North Central, was due last year, and now the time has passed, and there were 3 other local councils, provincial councils will expire their period of time by October 28th. So 6 councils out of 9 will be expired by the end of October basically. So in that scenario, in this context, we don't see that the Yapalna government, the SLFP and the UNP is trying their level best to hold the elections. It seems like they were having a severe setback from the local councils, and they are in the inner political turmoil sort of, and now they are debating whether the provincial council should go with the previous preferential voting system, and they are not working according to the constitution when it comes to the delimitation report. For example, what the constitution says very clear, I mean within 60 days of submitting this delimitation report at the parliament, tabling at the parliament, it should be debated and going for a 2/3 majority vote, which has not happened. The time has passed now. There's
If you focus on poll financing.
No, I am just coming into that. What I see here, no political party in parliament is serious about it. There's a constitution violated on this. I mean, they have to act very fast. No one is taking serious. No one seems like serious about it. Even the joint opposition is not serious about it. So in this context, we have to talk about introducing new laws where the present parliament is not doing their level best to implement the present law, the present constitution of the country. They are ignoring the constitution, they are ignoring the law. And in the other hand, we are now demanding to introduce new laws on campaign finance and all that. This is not a new thing. I mean, Arjun Aloysius flagged it in a way, but as Malinda very correctly said, he is not the only one who was financing these politicians. And my understanding, I mean, when we are talking about this particular list and 118 or about any other number, of course, there are believable evidence that at least 24 parliamentarians had taken money from the perpetual treasurers and affiliated companies. But don't forget the fact that we don't have any campaign finance laws here. What we have tried to introduce for such a long time has not very efficient, or I mean not very fruitful, in a way that not even a draft has come out. So we are very long way behind when comparing to the other parts of the country. But this has becoming a very big need, of course, because I mean, as Malinda said, I mean, maybe the Arjun Aloysius might be the only person who is having 2/3 majority in the parliament.
But there was a time in Sri Lanka before 1978 where the particular laws related to polls election financing was actually very tough, and representatives were, you know, removed from their particular constituencies on charges of non-disclosure. So if we could have had it at that time, why not now?
I mean, definitely this is the argument for such a long time now. I mean, previously, before 1977, this particular law was very much implemented, and we saw so much of parliamentarians coming out of that. There's so much of election petitions based on the election expenditure was very, very close run. And in the other hand, with the preferential voting system, I mean, no one is very serious about this, as even though one particular parliamentarian or elected member election petition is filed against him, that particular sheet is not coming for the person who is going with the petition. So it always comes to the political party, which do not give any benefit for the petitioner. So that has discouraged to unbelievable amount. So that's why we didn't see the petitions coming on. But here at the local council levels, now that particular exercise can be exercised once again, and it is very challenging how we can adapt that particular exercise to the preferential voting system. And on the other hand, the reform agenda of the election reforms, electoral reforms for that matter, has totally failed. Now no one seems like interested of electoral reforms, where I mean whole reformist agenda has totally failed at the moment.
Malinda, now in the event there is a new law, what do you think the penalty should be on offenders? Now, apart from saying depriving him or her from the seat,
Well,
what kind of penalty should we look at?
First of all, that particular person does not have the right to represent. That is the basic thing. But as you know, in our court system, penalties and punishments are very arbitrary. Someone gets 20,000, someone gets 10,000, 3 years or 30 years. But I mean, that's just conjecture. I'm not an expert on that kind of thing. But in the event that we don't have the laws, you asked the question, what happened after 77? Don't forget that the person who wrote that constitution also said, when he opened up the economy, he said, let the robber barons come. So he was saying, okay, a blank check to thievery, and so that was the culture that was ushered in. So why should they then have any laws which make it difficult for people to bribe politicians? Because they are into corruption. The corruption was fine I mean, ideologically they were committed to looking the other way or partaking in that whole exercise. In the event that we don't have the laws, I think that maybe we could do this. A candidate can say, I don't mind taking money from people, right? But on one condition, whoever gives me money should be agreeable to his or her name being published, being publicized, right? Being made public along with the amount. So that if you give me 50 rupees or 50,000 or 50 million and I get elected as president of the country in 2020 or whenever, and somewhere down the road I give you you or your company or someone closely related to you some kind of contract, some kind of thing that gives you a huge financial benefit, then I'm accused of taking a bribe, right? But here we don't know who is giving the money. As the Asirija Sekara and Sujiva Senasinghe, we don't know. But he said, Sujiva Senasinghe said, I will resign my parliamentary seat if it was found that perpetual treasuries had given me money, right? People forget those things. But the good politician, now we have a politician here. Next election, I'm asking you, just say that. You need money for a campaign. We are not all rich people, but you can just say, I'm not going to, I will try to manage with what I have. I will welcome contributions and donations because I need to run a campaign, but I will mention, you should be okay with me naming you and naming the amount. That kind of culture can be brought.
I want to interrupt you for a second here. Let's move to Mr. Tennakoon. Now, if you were in a situation like that, now Malinda says that you're a politician, so if you were in a situation like that, would you accept money from an individual of that caliber who is already embroiled with corruption charges, like the central bank bond controversy?
Certainly not when the things have become so publicly known and open, and then when it was debated in public that such a big scam has happened and taken place with robbing public money. I mean, taking gratification or some kind of assistance from a person like that is not ethical at all. Absolutely no. Therefore, it is wrong, and if anybody says, if someone asks me to resign, I will resign, I don't know what politics that is. In another country, this should have never happened. He should have resigned on his own, not because someone is telling.
Are you saying all 118 members of parliament who had connections with Aloysius need to resign?
Whoever can be accused, whoever can be proved that they have taken this illegitimate money from this person should be responsible for that transaction and take upon themselves the ethical right of telling the people who elected them that I have done a wrong thing, therefore I am getting out. This is what is happening in the rest of the world. This is the democracy we are seeing in other places. This is what we are not seeing here. This is the difference. Most unfortunate thing.
Mr. Tennakoon, just one question for us. If we had a stringent election financing law in place, and if our parliamentarians had declared donations from where they got it and how much, do you think it would have provided some kind of cover for these politicians right now who are under the spotlight?
Yeah, unless that law sort of specifies and says there is nothing wrong in taking money from anybody and for any reason. I don't think there will be a law like that. The laws are there to prevent bad things happening. So I don't think anybody will legalize a bad thing. What is important here is this is not an ethical thing. It is not an acceptable thing. Therefore, no laws are necessary under democratic functioning, proper functioning, if a person respects ethics, no law is necessary. He can go home.
Charita, I think there's a different side of that particular story. It was the two parliamentarians who took money and be reported by the CID are the people who are saying they got this money for their election campaign. But here, according to my knowledge, according to the information which I have gathered, I mean, is this money really came for the election campaigning? I doubt. Just because, I mean, for Dayasiri Jayasekara's case, it's very clear he got that particular check on the nomination day. Fair enough. So, I mean, basically the nomination day or the campaign period is the time where most of these people do their, contribution or campaign when it comes to the campaign finance. But here, something strange with the Sujiva Senasinghe's case, all this money, only one check has come during the election campaign period. So, it's not basically the election campaign money which has come down there. So, for the election campaigning, I mean, regulating it is very simple. There are so much of examples throughout the country, more than 50 countries, democratic countries, having election finance laws there. For simply, or I mean, we can have a very simple law. I mean, every candidate has to register there. I mean, funding register, maintaining a public, the election campaign registry, finance registry is not a very difficult thing. I mean, then everyone can. You can donate, Mr. Tennakon. Even as an election monitor, if I feel that I should contribute to someone, I can openly do it, and he can openly accept it. So, it's a very practicable and, accepted norms that, I mean, I have a trust, so I can give money, contribute. My legitimate legal money which belonging to me, not to the state. So, if it is coming from the state, we are definitely having a problem.
Thank you. I think I'll ask you, Mr. Kirti, this question. How happy are you with the Bond Commission report?
For us, I mean, we know, according to my understanding, this Bond Commission report is something 8,000 plus pages.
Yeah.
So I have read only something like 1,000 pages out of it. So I am very keen to find out what exactly on this 6,500 plus pages, which I don't have the access. But here, my understanding as a person who very closely monitored this thing and very closely associated with these findings and documents, I think, I mean, there was so much of information is available with these documents, which we don't have the access. For example, if we have the access to the C350, we can get more information related to the parliamentarians who had communications with the perpetual company. In the other hand, if we can get the more information, the date, number of treasury bonds issued in related to these days, of course, which some of the information even the Auditor General did not receive from the relevant officials. If we had that access, if we have the full access to what the Auditor General had, we can ask the general public to provide us with the additional information, so we can do our own assessment. Because here, it was not the CID, it was not the investigators who found some of these documents. It was the civil society, the activists who find these documents. The whistleblowers were continuously providing these documents. Why I am telling this particular story is, when 2017 February 7th, we published one of the leaked documents in related to the internal audit report done by the central bank, and it describes some of the expenditures done by the former governor Arjuna Mahendra. Now, based on that particular document, last week we saw the CID making a report that 3.2 million was spent, and this particular money was paid back to the government using Mendes company funding.
Yes.
So, I mean, here, if we have access to the whole document, I mean, whole lot of information we can ask from the general public. Definitely, the public will have a whistleblowers basically have access to this particular document.
I hear what you say, Mr. Tenakun, but some of the information in the bond, in the commission report, is actually a devastating testament on those in charge. For example, Arjun Mahendran served as governor for 487 days after the first bond scam and 91 days after the second bond scam without any interruption or official reprimand. Neither the minister in charge of the central bank, which happens to be Ranil Wickremesinghe, and he's also the leader of the party, nor the governor's appointing authority, the president, made any attempt to remove Mr. Mahendran from office, at least to suspend him, to sideline him, or to initiate action through Parliament to have his removal, or to have an inquiry. Nothing was done. And what makes it worse is that when we consider the so-called infamous breakfast meeting held in the central bank, which was attended by, amongst others, 3 key leaders of the UNP, Ravi Karunanayake, who was the deputy leader at the time, Malik Samaravikram, the chairman, and Kabir Hashim was the general secretary. They attended this meeting ostensibly to discuss state funding requirements, but they had no business to do that. This is normally handled by the Treasury, and that is normally. But what were they doing there? And there again, the Presidential Commission of Inquiry is silent on that aspect as to why these people, there's no reprimand, there's no mention. They just say that they had a meeting and these people were present. But they broke official process and procedure. And that was really the start of everything else, because that is where, if you want to look at the beginning, apart from the fact that this was all designed and executed someplace else before the election, when they started, this was the beginning. And the Commission of Inquiry is shockingly silent on any reprimand. How do you feel about that?
I was really shocked by this 7-minute questioning of Kabir Hashim and Malik Samaravikram, not the usual aggressive way the Aegis department did with the Ravi Karunanayake and the other people. I mean, but here still, now some of this information is available, but we were kept silence on that. We were kept dark on that. In the other hand, definitely I believe that the Commission should have done better. If they were allowed to question the Kabir Hashim and Malik Samaravikram extensively, especially, moreover, the Prime Minister definitely should have questioned by Yasanta Kodagoda and the other people who questioned the previous accusers or the witnesses.
We're going for a short commercial break. When we come back, we will discuss more on good governance as well as the political climate in Sri Lanka. Stay connected, stay with Face the Nation. We will be right back. Welcome back. This is Face the Nation. I start off the third round with Rusipala Thendakon, who is a member of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party, representing the Colombo Municipal Council now. Ms. Thendakon, when Malinda was talking about the candidature of Maithripala Sirisena at the 2020 presidential elections, you were somewhat shaking your head in disagreement. I'm trying to figure out what is really the stand of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party at present in terms of the 2020 presidential polls. Your time starts now.
I think, in politics, particularly when things are changing so rapidly, when unexpected things are happening, when things they wanted to implement could not be implemented, I mean, people can change and people can think of, contributing what they wanted to contribute to the society in some way. So therefore, I don't think there is any hard and fast rule for somebody to say, well, I will not contest. Maybe he would have said that at that time, thinking that he can accomplish all what he promised to the country by way of election promises, by way of addressing the people, public, seeking their support. You know, if he could accomplish all those things, there is no necessity for him to come back. But when what we see today is a complete failure of that accomplishment. We are gone completely out of the track, and we have not been able to see the fulfilling of any of those promises. The first such thing was the 100-day program. Now the 100-day program was introduced to dissolve the government after 100 days. What if the government was dissolved immediately after the president was elected? Things would have been different. No one will be able to predict what could have been the political scenario in this country if that happened. But it did not happen. So when you look back in retrospect, what you see is a very carefully planned state of affairs. A carefully planned state of affairs for the survival of some people in power or to remain in power has taken place. Nothing else. It was not a fulfillment of the promises that they gave to the people. Therefore, it is right, quite right, absolutely correct for somebody who had the intention of delivering something to the people, feeling that I should come back to do it.
Mr. Nakul, when you say things are changing fast, it affects an individual like you as well, because a few years ago, as a civil rights activist, when I asked you about the current conduct of the coalition government, you said that the president as well as the prime minister should be held responsible for the state of affairs in Sri Lanka at present. And now you seem to be deviating from that position. So I'm trying to figure out, things are changing fast, things have certainly changed fast.
I'm sorry to say, Shamir, I don't agree with you. I still maintain if somebody has done something wrong or somebody has fallen into a trap, I will say so.
So failure, when you say failure of accomplishment, the president has been in power for the last 3 years. So who is responsible for this failure of accomplishment?
Please look at the government, the form of the government they are in. Is it a government where there is any understanding or where there is an agreement or consensus on the affairs that they should
So
do?
let's hypothetically say the president did dissolve parliament a day after he was elected president. Who will have a majority in parliament?
Very doubtful to say.
Is it the UNP or the Sri Lanka Freedom Party at that time?
Don't forget that although the UNP claims that they played a very vital role in bringing the president into power, don't forget the fact that they were not in a position to field a candidate themselves. They had to go behind people. The civil society was overriding. And then they said, no, there was nobody in your ranks to come as the presidential candidate acceptable to the country. Therefore, they had to go in search of a person. So, the results would not have been what we imagine today. If the UNP was not in a position to field a candidate of their own, what does it mean? That means that they were not accepted in total as they wanted the people to accept them at that time.
Thank you very much, Rusid Balatanakon, who is representing the Kalam Municipal Council from the political party Sri Lanka Freedom Party. I now move my attention to Malinda Seniratne, political commentator. Malinda, first question is, are you satisfied with Mr. Tennakon's answer? Are you?
No.
And why is that?
This is all conjecture about, what if we dissolve. I don't want to go there. It was very unclear kind of situation, so anything could have also happened. But he is right in this sense, that the United National Party could not field a candidate at that time. But the moment there is a change, like what happened on January 8, 2015, there's a moment, the momentum also shifts. And whether the Sri Lanka Freedom Party would have contested on its own or with the United National Party in some kind of coalition, we don't know. But the 100 days program, now as we've heard this, victory has 1,000 fathers and defeat is always an orphan. No one is taking responsibility for authoring the 100 days program today. No one seems to know. As for, the inability of President Maithripala Sirisena to deliver what he promised, what you're kind of implying is that he was not allowed to because of the United National Party. Don't forget that when we assess the amount of power that a person has, who has the most power, I have a very simple rule of thumb. He or she who can effect the greatest amount of change with the least amount of effort is the person who has the most amount of power. The 19th Amendment, even with the 19th Amendment, the President of this country has the most, is the individual who holds the most amount of power. For him to say now that he was not able to deliver, I'm not going to buy that. Moreover, we have a situation where he can. It's probably the only thing that one can say if you want to contest again. We have to say that I couldn't finish my work. Give me another chance.
Yeah,
that I can understand. That's rhetoric. But this is a person who doesn't know who authored the 100 days program. There have been so many contradictory statements made by President Maithripala Sirisena that I'm forced to conclude that he is confused. He is confused about where he is and where he is going. He may, I have never had a conversation. I only two conversations with the president, one before he became president, one afterwards. And so I'm not in a position to read his mind. I know only what he has said and what he has done and not done. And that does not allow me to take that as a kind of a legitimate position to take about his political ambitions. That I couldn't do it, now let me give me another chance. Well, people have a way of reading it which may not correspond to what politicians think, and that we saw on the 10th of February. That result is very telling. How people read President Sirisena, the party that he leads, and the United National Party, and the joint opposition. You were talking about Gotabaya Rajapaksa, and we can talk about the Rajapaksas. I have this small story to say that I think that the person who worked hardest to bring Maithripala Sirisena to power was Mahinda Rajapaksa. For all that he has done and not done, contributed to that victory. I get the feeling that the United National Party and the Sri Lankan Freedom Party under Maithripala Sirisena is returning the favour. We have a situation where, I told this in one of your programs, that Yahapalne has become a kunuharpa, it has become a khasword. That is a big blow to people like Kirti. You are working so hard, you are taking these concepts seriously. You want to bring it into the political culture, make it a central part, and you are not allowed to do that. Why? You can't say Yahapalne.
Thank you very much, Manan. Let's stop at that. I want to quickly move to Kirti Ennakon, Executive Director of the Campaign for a Free and Fair Election. Kirti, a few months ago, to be very precise, approximately around 9 weeks ago, we had Parliamentarian State Minister Sujiva Senasinghe sitting on this very seat. One of his claims to my questions was, Shamir, what have I done wrong? Why are you circling my face and showing when I have not accepted money from perpetual treasuries? However, now it has come to light that in fact he has. What actions must the Prime Minister of this country, the Speaker of this country, even the rule of law, what actions must be taken against individuals of this caliber?
I think my understanding, according to the information what we are gathering these days, at least 24, we have to talk about 24 parliamentarians within no time, within next 3-4 months for sure. So, I mean, we have to do something serious. We have to take this dialogue forward and demand the President and the Prime Minister to be very serious on this. For example, now we saw that Ravi Karunanayaka's ministerial post was taken out after this exposure came in the commission. But is something happen after Sujiva Senasinghe's thing happened? And next week, maybe by 21st, there will be very powerful, another 2 names will come out. So at that particular time, whether they are in parliament or outside the parliament, whether they are in the provincial councils or the local councils for that matter, UNP is very serious to do something about this. Or if if a SLFP member who is he is a part of this coalition government's name is coming out next week, maybe within next 2-3 weeks, is the president ready to take it very seriously? I don't think so. Why I am saying it is that, as Haras very correctly said, when the second Treasury Bond issue came out, the civil society, some group of people continuously pressured the President and the Prime Minister to remove the Arjuna Mahendran, which has not happened. And in the other hand, I personally had to go into the courts, going to the Supreme Court, asking not to reappoint him. So that sort of a pressure has to come out now. Otherwise, when each and every week new names are coming out, now we know 32 banks has given written instructions by the central bank to give specific information in related to the transactions which they have done with some of the banking accounts.
So now
some bank accounts, they did not last for more than 4 weeks. They opened the bank account for very specific reason. They did the transaction. The moment they did the transaction, they closed the bank account down. So we know these issues. The other thing, we talked about this internal audit report of the central bank. We know 5 pages of that particular internal report is very correct, as we saw the CID report their facts to the courts yesterday, last week. What will happen to the 6th page, where the Mahesh Senanayaka's name was mentioned twice? And Mahesh Senanayaka was appearing with the JVP Peraliya Karambuma main presentation, main podium down there.
So
and don't forget the fact.
Are you trying to imply that the JVP also took money?
Wait, I didn't finish it, Samir. Give me 2 minutes. Just 30 seconds for that matter. Yeah. What I am saying here is that it was the JVP in 2016 November with their, party website, Lanka Truth, exposed this particular internal report. So why on earth the people, the same JVP who exposed this particular internal audit report, if they are going through the whole report, where Mahesh Senanayaka's name is mentioned twice, why they took Mahesh Senanayaka into Peraliya Karambuma, Florida? That's my question. So once the JVP and the other people find an answer for that, I think you will find your answer.
So you are indirectly saying that the JVP accepted money as well.
They have to answer. We are talking about something like 70,000 transactions.
Thank you very much.
70,000 transactions.
Thank you very much, Kirti. They say that there were several civil rights activist groups as well who have accepted money. Your group is not there.
Samir, I think Sujiva Senasinghe, as you very correctly said, 9 weeks ago, in this chair, he said that he did not accept money. But I think, the number of the names which has coming out is investigated at the moment is unbelievable.
Thank you very much, Kirti. I open the floor for questions from our journalists, but before that, Faraz, we have a question from freelance journalist Srinath Fernando. This question is to Mr. Rusiripala Thendekon. Demanding W. Delivera to cross-examine Honorable Prime Minister is akin to asking only Mahinda Rajapaksa, Mahathir, to govern the country again. Should the Council of Attorney General's Department be laid off and keep only de Oliveira? Why should we then pay such good number of state attorneys? So the question is very simple. The question is demanding Dapul de Oliveira to cross-examine Honorable Prime Minister is akin to asking only Mahinda Rajapaksa Mahathir to govern the country again. So what do you gather from this question?
I think the question is based on a very unusual thing that happened in the commission, during the commission period, which all of us conjectured at that time as a thing that should not have happened, because we expected things to happen in a different way, because we really wanted the commission to cross-examine the Prime Minister at length, because there were many issues and counts on which the Prime Minister should have been questioned by the Commission. But nevertheless, when you read the Commission report, and we find that they have made their observations very clearly about their own assumptions or presumptions or conclusions about the Prime Minister's role in that transaction. Therefore, I was not for a moment disturbed by the fact that he was not cross-examined. Nevertheless, the commission has gone into the facts, gone into the details, and they have concluded the errors and the wrongs and the lapses on the part of the Prime Minister, which they have categorically stated in the commission report. Therefore, I think by not allowing Dapul de Oliveira to question him, maybe for some special reason, for some request that a person has made on a personal ground, that it will embarrass him or so on. I mean, this type of thing happens. Now, we saw the day that former Minister Ravi Karunanayake went before the commission. I mean, we saw a whole lot of his supporters surrounding the commission area. I mean, all these things are gimmicks, you know. These are political gimmicks, which we don't endorse at all.
Thank you very
accept.
Much. Thank you
so
very much.
The fact that Arvind, Dapul de Oliveira was prevented from questioning may be another gimmick.
Thank you very much.
But
I thought you were just about to start.
Just to add one thing. I mean, here, not allowing Dapul de Oliveira to question Prime Minister. Now see who's paying the penalty. I think, I mean, the parliamentarians who went there with the President and with the Prime Minister to see that particular occasion is paying the penalty. I have seen that more than 18 people who went with the Prime Minister on that particular day is now investigated on this particular
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, freelance journalist Srinath Fernando, for posing your question. You can do so by logging on to www.facebook.com/TV1 Face the Nation and be connected and pose a question to the panelist. Let's start off with Faraz.
Thank you, finally. Mr. Rusipala, this is for you. As a former senior banker as well, now the Bank of Ceylon has been confirmed to be a key player in this bond scam. We have to remember that it is this bank that gave the new boy on the block perpetual treasuries with a capital base of just 300 million. The Bank of Ceylon gave the Perpetual Treasuries Limited as a primary dealer a sum of 10 billion rupee, and this is the amount, this is the facility that was used to carry out the scam. And we have to understand that this is the first time that the Bank of Ceylon moved at such lightning speed, and the time to confirm this facility and the amount. And never, it's unprecedented in the history of the Bank of Ceylon. But yet, there is no censure in the Commission report about the Bank of Ceylon's activity. I'm going back to all these things that are at the beginning, because that's the best place to start, at the beginning. And here is clear evidence of collusion. It needs to be found out. We need to find out. Clearly, it couldn't have been the general manager of the Bank of Ceylon who authorized a 10 billion facility. and within minutes, I think it was during the extension requested, which was about 20 minutes and so on. So in this time period, obviously somebody very senior, somebody right up there at the top, ordered this facility to be granted. So if we can find out who that person is, we will get to the bottom of who the mastermind of this whole scam is.
As far as there is a bit of a technical area, a grey area I should say, in this whole transaction. The picture that you are trying to post, that somebody has to, from the top has to approve this amount, has not taken place on this occasion. Why? Because, you know, in the Treasury Department of a bank, it is the people who are in charge of the Treasury Department who take a momentous decision on matters like this. Now, if you go back into the transaction proper on this particular day, it was a matter of minutes. In a few minutes time only the Bank of Ceylon decided to bid on their own on behalf of another customer. Now there was no lending involved in that. Let us face the facts, you know. They did not lend any money to perpetual treasuries. Nor did they create a liability, proper legal liability on the perpetual treasuries. They took upon themselves the liability and they bid on their behalf, on behalf of perpetual treasuries by themselves. So there was no passing of liability or a question of getting an approval. He should have, if an approval was needed for the Bank of Ceylon to bid over and above a certain limit by themselves, then there is a violation. In this instance, there was no such thing. They thought, okay, it can be construed or technically pointed out that the Bank of Ceylon, like any other primary dealer, can submit a bid for 10 billion or 15 billion.
But that's the point. They didn't do it on their own. They did it on behalf of perpetual treasuries.
Correct. But it was in their name. They did not say we are buying this for perpetual treasuries. There was no record such. It was only an understanding. The request was made by perpetual treasuries. The Bank of Ceylon tendered the documents to purchase it on their behalf.
So what are you?
And it, saying? To refresh your mind. Sorry, to refresh your mind. It is after 2 days that the Bank of Ceylon dispensed that amount to perpetual treasuries with a small profit.
So you mean to say perpetual treasuries magically found the money to pay for this?
No, they were part and parcel of the game. They knew that there is going to be, instead of the 1 billion asked by the central bank, the central bank is going to accept all the bids. They knew it. That is where the inside information and the fraudulent part comes into in this transaction.
But Mr. Rusipala, Perpetual had a capital base of 300 million.
Yes.
And you'll appreciate that 10 billion is a lot of money, many times over the 300 million. It's this chicken feed, the 300 million. So where did they find the money? Was it from the intra-lending facility? How did they get the money to settle the Bank of Ceylon?
In this instance, what they did was, they did a trading themselves. They had time between on the day that the Bank of Ceylon purchased.
Because they had a ready and willing buyer in the form of the EPF funds.
Because they can find any amount of buyers for that rate. When a bond worth 120 rupees is to be purchased at 85 or 90 rupees, you can find any number of buyers. This is the game.
So if it is
that is what they did.
And then why do you think that Mr. Mahendran isn't coming back? Why is he not coming back to answer these questions?
Obviously, Faraz, Mahendran is the key man who played this game, who paved the way and who allowed the inside information, details, and who created new principles. But to accommodate this fellow's robbery.
But it is Mr. Mahendran who reminded everybody in court as well, and later that he got his instructions from, he only did as the Prime Minister, the Minister in charge, said.
Yes.
So he said that. And yet we find that the Prime Minister, even you, are ignoring the role of the Prime Minister in this sorry state.
I never ignored. I was one of the first to mention. The mistake he did in changing the ongoing system that was prevailing for several decades in the central bank.
But I mean,
just overnight, by a word.
But the Prime Minister made very statements that we can say, if we are nice, we can say that he was being economical with the truth, and if we are being nasty, we can say that he was lying. When he said that he asked for the change because in the previous administration there were various dodgy deals going on for the benefit of certain people.
If there was any dodgy deals,
why hasn't he proven it up to now?
If there were any dodgy deals or shady deals during the previous regime, the Prime Minister has every avenue open before him to expose those.
But he hasn't.
Who is preventing him? This is rhetoric. I am using the word that my friend is using often. This is mere political rhetoric, not amounting to any value. Absolute rubbish. He says that this has been done previously. Why don't you catch them? Who is preventing him? But what he did was totally irregular. He did not even care to see whether his direction or the instruction that he gave to Arjuna Mahendran was endorsed by the Monetary Board of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, which is a legal requirement. Arjuna Mahendran has no legal right to implement anything on his own.
Even if the Prime Minister told
Even if the Prime Minister says, he has to get the covering sanction, the sanction of the central bank. He got the covering sanction of the central bank 5 days later.
Why is the Presidential Commission of Inquiry silent on the Prime Minister's role there then?
Faraz, in my own humble opinion, according to this transaction, the entire Monetary Board should have resigned. The Prime Minister should have resigned. Arjuna Mahendran should have been jailed by now. All these things.
So, Kirti, you believe the same thing that Mr. Tennakoon is saying?
Yes,
you think resignation is important?
Definitely, yes.
When issue of this short crops
change of the systems from the direct placements and all that. I mean, how long that particular change of system has lasted? Only to rob twice the bank and nothing else.
May I say one thing? Yeah. The obsolete, the absurdness of the Prime Minister's directive is established by the fact, Shamir, that the central bank has revived that system again.
So that's the
very central bank, under the control of the Prime Minister as the minister in charge, has reverted back to that old system which the Prime Minister wanted abandoned.
So Kirti, you are saying
that... But this is a joke.
Kirti, you are saying that in a situation like this, the Prime Minister of the country should resign.
I mean, not only the Prime Minister, but I mean, long time ago, when the first thing happened, when the second thing repeated, Arjuna Mahendran should have been resigned, and that's what we were demanding. Of the Ravi Karunanayake, the people who instructed, and don't forget the fact that at that time, the Bank of Ceylon and the NSB, National Savings Bank, was under Minister Kabir Hashi. So who instruct the bankers, the bank chairmen to bid low? It's Ravi Karunanayake. So all these people who instruct part and parcel of this particular scam should have been resigned, and they were not investigated properly yet. So I think, I mean, we have just seen the, part of the iceberg.
Tip of the iceberg.
So
the bank should be subject to a banking commission, because so many untold things and unprecedented things have happened in the banking field during these 2.5 years. The appointments, continuation of directors after the changing of the ministries and the ministers, and then prevention of bidding at the central bank at the instigation of the ministers, transferring of people who were doing work in the central bank, EPF department, to the treasury departments of the banks. All these things have happened.
So, Mr.
Mr. Rosripal, you forget one thing. I mean, the additional time was given, and there's one other private bank was also managed to screw in and made a huge profit within some 10 or 20 minutes time. You can explain that part of the story for our viewers.
Mr. Tennakoon, so one can argue that all this could be a distraction from the prime suspect of the Treasury Bond scandal, who is unaccounted for.
No. He is only one appendage in this whole operation. No doubt that he is the key man who was used to do it, you know. But the person who gave the weapon to him, the person who plotted the scheme to do that, he is only the man who stabbed. Who gave the knife? Who found the time? Who pushed him to do it? These are all matters, you know, that should come to light, and at least on their own, as in a self-respecting manner. You respect the view of the people, you respect the ethics of the people, you respect the honor of a country, then things should have happened in a different way. Unfortunately, what we see is not that. We see something different. We see something not happening. Now, when the first direction was given, and as a result of that directive, the central bank suffered a loss of 600 odd million on that single day, on that single transaction, which is undisputed to date. Even the commission has found it. Prime Minister should have resigned. The second thing, he should have resigned on the date that the Monetary Board revived or discarded his directive. If I were the minister in charge, I say, I gave a directive, I had all my economic support and principles to back it up. This is why I gave the directive, and the central bank board of governors change it, and the minister remains. It's a sly and a slap on his face.
Not on mine.
Not on you. What the monetary board did subsequently by reverting to the original system, that alone is sufficient for a self-respecting minister to get out.
I think that when we call for Ranil Wickremesinghe's resignation, I agree with both of them on this. All these people, everyone who is, including President Maithripala Sirisena, let us not forget that he orchestrated with Ranil Wickremesinghe the dissolution of parliament before the first COPE report came out. So he's also culpable in some manner. But why we are asking people that we are saying that they should have resigned is because we expected them to do things differently than the government that they replaced. They came to power saying, we will not stand for any hanky-panky. We will not do any wrong. We will be accountable. We will be transparent and so on. So you naturally expect them to do much better than the previous regime, which they said was corrupt and doing everything in a very underhand kind of way. So they should resign because they said they are going to be different. But they are not going to resign because they were not different. Everyone who thought that they were different were wrong. And the people who voted them thinking that they would be different were betrayed. This government has betrayed the trust of those who voted for them in the belief that they will be different. There may be many who just wanted a different face. That's a different matter. I mean, they knew that these are crooks, but never mind, we want a different set of crooks. We are tired of the Rajapaksa faces, let's have someone else. But there were people
One small disagreement with my friend. The president had to dissolve the parliament
anyway,
because of the 100-day program and the pressure that came from his partner because of that 100-day program understanding.
Yeah, but the timing of that, this is
of course, it was a very, very bad coincidence. I mean, the report was to be put out.
Let's give him the benefit of the doubt then.
Yes, of course, because the report was to be put out on the same day. At the same time, somebody was pressurizing him to dissolve. We have gone with the 100-day program. President had to yield.
I don't know, if you were the president, would you have?
Yeah, I had to. I would look at this.
But it's no point of crying over spilt milk now, Mr. Tennakoon, isn't it? He should have taken action before that or waited until...
The political stability is something that is more important than most of the other things, in a country. a political stability cannot be just disturbed for various other reasons. When such things can be dealt otherwise, if you have no other means, then it is okay. Now, the fraud can be dealt with in a different way, but you don't have to sacrifice the political stability of the country to do that. I mean, if I was the president, that is how I would look at it. You send the fellow to jail on a later date, but I'll still maintain the political stability of the country to the last date that I could, because in the international image, that is what is important.
I think that if you are talking about political stability and you're talking about a new political culture, the foundation of that should be integrity. You compromise that, and then you are going to get a very shaky kind of edifice, and that's not going to stand. And let us not forget, immediately after assuming office, President Maithripala Sirisena appointed his brother to a high post in the government. That was against the grain of everything that was said in the run-up to the election. So after that, of course, we saw the 2015 parliamentary election where people who lost were brought in through the nationalist, and so many other things that shocked people who believed in the Yahapalana promise. But with respect to the central bank bond issue, well, we can be generous and say political stability, and therefore he compromised on the date of the dissolution of parliament. But there's so many other things that he has done wrong, along with the United National Party. And our dilemma is that we are facing a situation where we replaced a government that was said to be corrupt and engaged in all kinds of wrongdoing. They were thrown out. We bring some people hoping that they will be better, and now we are in a situation where these people are gaining ground. How unfortunate and helpless are we as a people? That is the kind of question that I think we need to ask ourselves.
Kirti, I have a question for you. Now, we've seen media reports since lately that officers of the CID who are investigating the bond scandal have been coming under, all kinds of influence and pressure not to divulge names of parliamentarians who are involved or who have allegedly received funds from perpetual treasuries or companies affiliated to perpetual treasuries. What have you heard in this regard? Is this true?
I mean, the day and the day before, where the CID the file B reports at the judiciary was very crucial, and we saw there were numerous incidents reported, and there were very informative information were revealed in related to the IGP, and the senior DIG Shani was called by the Prime Minister and given certain instructions. But very luckily, we haven't seen any impact on that. As we predict, as we expected, the names has come out. All these B reports were submitted to the judiciary, which was very commendable. And in the other hand, I don't think the scale of information now the CID has gathered in one place, the scale of information the other people are gathering is definitely putting pressure on the investigators to further investigate into this, and whatever they find to report back to the judiciary. So yes, I totally agree that some of the very senior police officers are under tremendous pressure on this, coming from very top politicians. But here, to be fair to them, to acknowledge their hard work, definitely the investigators are doing really, really well, and we should salute them for their courageous work. Which they were not, affected by the pressure, which is very, very commanding.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gentlemen, the lady for your questions. I'm now going for a short commercial break. When we come back, it's the final round. Stay connected, stay with Face the Nation. We will be right back. Welcome back. This is Face the Nation. I start off the final round with Malinda Senviratne, political commentator. Malinda, where is all this heading? We speak about the bond scam. We speak about uncertainty in the political arena in Sri Lanka. Where are we really heading? Next 18 months.
Next 18 months. Well,
No, 16 months.
17 months, approximately 16
No,
months.
it's 16 months.
16 months.
Right.
Okay,
To
next
be very
16
specific.
months.
Right.
Where are we heading? In at least 17 months, will we have a new president? What's happening?
he was talking about the political will. Now the political will for reform, constitutional, no one is talking about constitutional reform. Forget the 20th Amendment. We were talking about, grand things for reconciliation and all those things, peace and harmony.
House is on fire.
Everything is
No
out.
constitution.
So there is no political will for that kind of thing. That's all gone. Now it's survival. Now it's elections. Now all the people, including the joint opposition. Why is it? It was mentioned that even the joint opposition is not talking about electoral reform or the provincial council, because everyone is gearing up for the major election. Whether it's a parliamentary election or a presidential election, we don't know. But that is what the politicians are targeting. So we are heading for elections, whether it's going to be under the old PR system or it's going to be with the delimitation exercise completed and a different system. We don't know, because it depends on what suits those who legislate at that particular point, who can legislate. So we are in a situation where the people don't count. Reform doesn't count. Good governance doesn't count. Getting the right political culture, as was promised in the Maitri Palanya, Apamanagyak and all those things, all out of the window. So we are heading to a situation where the focus will be on power and power alone. Who is going to remain in power? Who is going to come into power? Whether it's going to be someone else, I'm not Sumanadasa, I'm into crystal gazing, so I'm not going to say anything. But one thing is certain. The current set of politicians who have ruled this country for the last two major political parties and all the small parties which have supported them or thrown them out of power are culpable. They are not going to deliver anything close to the Yahapalanya that was promised. And therefore, I believe that the people of this country have a responsibility to themselves and their children to stop, unfetter themselves from this crazy attachment to these two major political parties and the whole political party system. They have to think of someone else. They have to think of a different kind of political system. They have to think of a different kind of political movement that can deliver something else. Instead of saying, throw them out, we are back here, throw these guys out, we bring those people back. When are we going to end this? I want that to happen in my lifetime, ideally, but if not, at least in the lifetimes of my children.
Thank you very much, Malinda Senviratne, political commentator. Malinda, on this very show a couple of months ago, you said you will also come in as a presidential candidate.
Given the people
are
who
are you still hopeful of your candidature?
If you look at the people who have been in power, who are in power, and who aspire to be in power, don't you think that I'm far more far more credible choice?
Let the people decide, Malinda.
Let them decide.
Let them
But
decide.
I think I am much better.
Give us the choice.
Let's now move our attention to Kirti Nakon, Executive Director of the Campaign for a Free and Fair Election. Kirti, will we see a light end of the tunnel? Will we see at least arrests being made, substantial arrests being made, people being punished for the offences that they have done, maybe from the Rajapaksa clan, maybe from the UNP clan? Will we see justice in the next 16 months?
One good thing about these investigations, the ongoing investigations, is that we see some thing is delivered, at least in front of the courts. So the gathering of information is taking place, the investigations goes on, whatever they find from various sources and all that is very much filed in the CID. So it is a matter of time when will this information will come out, and the real the will, the political will, the will of the judiciary, the will of the citizens to implement, punish, have a fair trial and all that will take place. So that's the good part of that. But here, for last 10 days, actually last 11 days, what we have saw was that, I mean, everyone is talking about who are the parliamentarians got the money and who are the civil society, the journalists and so on, who got the money out of the perpetual treasurers. But it is not the real issue, as Mr. Rusripala Tennakon very correctly said. Who are the main culprits behind that? Who are the masterminds? And when will these people take into the books? Will these people were cross-examined by the way they properly properly at the judiciary is our best question, our most interested question. I think we are having a very big hope. This sort of investigation was never possible during the last 10-12 years. So at least that part of the story is happening at the moment. So to answer, I think, I mean, we are very hopeful that we can see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Thank you very much, Kirti Tennakon, Executive Director for the Campaign for a Free and Fair Election. Kirti, a very light question before I move to our senior banker, one-time senior banker and now SLFP Council member, Mr. Rusripala Tennakon. Since of late, you've been taking pictures a lot with politicians. I saw a picture of you and Dayasri Jayasekara at Independence Square, and this week Dayasri Jayasekara is being questioned by the CID.
I mean, 1 week ago, 2 weeks ago, of course, I had a picture with Sujiva Senasinghe too.
Yeah, there you go. So I'm saying everyone who you take a picture with is in trouble finally. So are you going behind these politicians or what's happening?
No, I mean, we were having our the early morning walk down there, and we met so much of politicians.
So,
I am a man who was associating.
So there was never an exchange of money there, right?
Sorry?
There was never an exchange of money. No one gave you money there at Independence Square.
We are exchanging smiles.
Good dance. Thank you very much. Kirti Tennakon, Executive Director for the Campaign for a Free and Fair Election. I now move my attention to Mr. Rusripala Tennakon, Council Member of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party. Mr. Tennakon, fortunately, unfortunately, you are now a member of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party, promoting the ideologies. But very fortunately, you're a council member representing the Colombo Municipal Council, which can be a platform for you to instill some sort of change. My question to you is, if there needs to be change in the governance structure of this country at present, what changes do you envisage for the future of Sri Lanka?
I think looking at what is happening today, Shamir, we are heading for a very disastrous situation. We have survived the period of war, and then we have retained our sovereignty in that respect. But today we are seriously losing the grip of our sovereignty, the economic sovereignty. We are losing completely. We are on the downfall. So this is a very serious state of affairs. Our independence, the so-called independence, I don't know to what extent we can maintain as an independent country because of the economic the sovereignty threat issue. Because we can't stand on our own anymore, and we are going from down the drain at a very fast speed. So therefore, my expectation is that all the politicians in this country should get together and sink all their differences for the sake of the country, for the sake of the future, for the sake of the future generations. That is the most acceptable solution in the interest of the country's future. That is what I have to say. Because we can think of parties, we can think of groups contesting each other, but then nothing is going to bring about a settlement or a solution to the seriously dilapidating situation of the economy of this country. We are in a very serious fix. That must be understood. We don't have economic independence anymore. Let us face the reality. And we don't have anything in sight as a plan or a scheme or some strategy to get out of that mess either. Therefore, everybody will have to put their heads together and think in that direction.
I want to ask you one final question, Mr. Nakon. If you were to change and go back to January 8th, 2015, who would you have voted for? Who would you have voted for? Because right now, a lot of people, many people, when you see them on the road, when you see them at a restaurant, they always say that if it was the previous government, at least things would have been moving. At least there would have been construction. Now everything has come to a standstill thanks to the present government. Why is the change of notion suddenly on the mind frame of the ordinary people?
No, it's very natural for the people to come to conclusions like that because they have seen certain things happening during the previous regime. At the same time, they have also forgotten what the previous regime did, certain things which are not acceptable to them. This is human, you know. This is human because within a short period of time, you forget some bad things and then you think of some good things that you have expectations in your mind. But the fact of the matter is that the UNP's role in the national government prevented the movement according to the expectation of the people.
So what Malinda said is 100% true. First, Mahinda Rajapaksa contributed to Maithripala Sirisena's victory. And now President Maithripala Sirisena and the Prime Minister are contributing or returning the favor back. You think so?
No, I don't think so. Now there is enough time for them to, for both parties to decide what they are going to do. Because if there is a slight change in the UNP leadership, I think the whole country will come back to normal situation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rusipala Tennako.
Find a presidential material.
Thank you very much, Malinda Siniratna, a political commentator, for joining us this evening on the show. Mr. Rusipala Tennako and also Kirti Tennako for joining us this evening on our show Face the Nation. Thank you very much, Charita, for joining us, and thank you very much, Faraz, for joining us this evening on the show as well. Tomorrow morning, 7 a.m., who is your guest? And which topic would you be focusing this time around for us?
I have left it to my colleague Bandula Jayasekara, who's kindly agreed to take the heat off me, because after finishing this program, Bandula decided that I need a bit of sleep. So
for us, you are clearly growing old, by the way.
So Bandula will be cross-examining Maitri Gunaratne
tomorrow morning
and find out the state of the nation.
Right. Thank you very much, Faraz. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show, and looking forward to having you on the show in the next few weeks as well. So thank you very much, the gentleman and the lady, for joining us this evening on Face the Nation as well. I leave you tonight with a quote, as I always do. No dream is too big, no challenge is too great. Nothing we want for our future is beyond our reach. Take care and good night.